Hi punks, we meet again. I don't have a microphone neither today because I thought that I could make the old one work, but apparently not. Normally I will have one for the next video. Let's cross our fingers, but there is no reason not to. Today I'm here to talk about my TBR for 2024, all the books I have physically on my shelves that I have to read. I tend to finish books before buying another, but at the end of this year, with my Christmas money, I bought a lot of books and I had a voucher in the library too, so I have a lot of books and I have to read them. So you know how easy it is to buy books and having books that you have to read already. Okay, let's jump into it. First I have Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. And I don't have excuses because this one is on my shelf for a long time, maybe about 3 years. I have a bit of an excuse because it was on my boxes from my first apartment, but this year is the one. It is a classic telling about Alice who falls in a hole and facing adventures, absurd adventures, and I think I will love it, at least more than Kafka, with the absurd writings. Can't wait to read it, and it's short. Plus, this is a very beautiful edition in one of the most beautiful libraries in the world, which was in Porto, Portugal. Here it is. Next, with my voucher, about the sequel of A Psalm for the White Bird by Becky Chamber, A Prayer for the Crown Shy. The titles are beautiful. Obviously I had to read the prequel, which must be as good as the first one. I can't wait to read it. Next, there is As Long as the Lemon Tree Grows by Zulfa Katu, and this one I bought because of allisonpaiges, again, the goddess of YouTube for me. This is a young adult historical contemporary fiction. I love to read about historical fiction, and if allisonpaiges recommended it, I just needed to read it. It is a story about Salama, who is studying in pharmacy during a political complex environment. Which is the civil war in Syria against the authoritarian regime. She volunteered to work at the hospital at home. She is living with her sister-in-law, who is pregnant, and she promised to her brother to keep her sister-in-law safe before he was arrested, and the only way to keep her safe is to flee the country. And I don't want to say too much about the plot because, spoiler alert, I read it this month, so I will talk about it in my January Reads review. I was thrilled. I was thrilled to read it. Next, there is a YA historical fiction, which is Our Violent Delight by Chloe Gong. This is about two protagonists who are heir of opposite gang, set in China, 1920s, and this is supposed to be a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, so I was curious. I'm not such a big fan of YA books, but historical fiction, yes, so I just was curious about it, and because of the edition, this is just beautiful, so I'm weak. And obviously there is Our Violent Ends, which is beautiful again. I'll talk about this Violent Delight because I read it this month. Next, there is a retelling of Greek mythology, which is Ariadne, I hope I pronounce it well, by Jennifer Sant. I loved The Song of Achilles. It was one of my favorite books of 2021. And I love Tissy too, so I just wanted to read more about retellings of Greek mythology. But I heard that the writing of this one was not as good as Madeline Miller's, so I'm gonna read it not waiting too much. of this book and I hope I won't be disappointed. So I'll tell you when I'll read it. Then there is The Witcher by Andrzej Sapkowski. I hope I pronounced it well too. It is a fantasy book about the adventures of Geralt, whose magic powers comes from training from his childhood and elixirs. And he's considered as a monster even though he kills monster for money. And I'll talk about it in my January review because I read it this month also and I can't wait to talk about it. Then there is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This is a fantasy novel about a girl who is stealing the identity of her brother in order to survive, and it is set in China in the 1340s. And I just wanted to read more books set in Asian countries. I'm very curious about it and I've heard good things about it, so I can't wait to jump into it. I already bought the prequel and the editions are gorgeous. Finally, French edition are making gorgeous books, so I'm pleased with it. Next, with my voucher about the first 3 volumes of Game of Thrones. I won't talk about the summary too much because I suppose that probably most of you know what it is about, but it is a high fantasy book about a dreadful winter returning and dark forces massing beyond the protective wall of the north. And there is politics fighting for the throne of iron, and obviously I loved the series and it is a mainstay in fantasy. I love to read the original work from a series or a movie because you are supposedly never disappointed. I don't think I will read the 3 of them this year, but at least the first one. And maybe the next one if I have the motivation. But they're a bit intimidating me. It will be easier because I bought them in French, but they're a bit long. The first one is more than 700 pages. Next, I've heard of this book everywhere for fantasy lovers, and it is L'Ascenseur Royal by Robin Hood, which is the equivalent of The Assassin's Apprentice in English. And this is the story about a bastard, Fitz, who is growing up, as I understand, learning about assassins because a king wants him to be his personal assassin, but he has to learn about politics too. And I've heard this is really well written and I just wanted to jump into it this year too. So that's why I won't be able, I think, to read the 3 Game of Thrones volumes because I will read this one also too, and maybe the next, because if it is very good I won't be able to stop because I don't know how the story continues instead of the Game of Thrones one. So I can't wait to read it too. Next there is, after The Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings saga. I can kill someone with it, guys. I can carry it in my bag and just throw it at someone. So this is a special edition in French of The Lord of the Ring, which is gorgeous, and I've bought it a month ago and I have to read it this year. Participates to the fact that I won't be able to finish all of the Game of Thrones neither, because I don't know if I will read all of it in once, but this is the 3 volumes in one. I think I will separate them a bit, but obviously I had to read it because I love the films, and this one is a mainstay too in fantasy and I love to read the original work, so had to read it. And finally, there is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. As I said in my previous video, I've begun to read it at the end of last month and I finished it this month. And I'll talk about it in my January review. So this is it, guys. I really hope I can read all of these books this year. I won't be too hopeful, but I can't wait to read. Bye guys.